So right off the bat, I want to point this out. So we got Sam here, and we got John here. They're on the wall. It's snowy all around. They're at the top of the wall. They're on the Night's Watch is the name of the people that arm the wall, basically, to keep everyone safe, to make sure that no one storms the wall, gets through, and gets into the south, and compromises the rest of Westeros. So, let's break this down really quickly. First off, the light sources are these little flaming lamps. As we can see, there's a little bit of light all around them here in the background, but that's mostly supposed to emulate moonlight. They did a good job there. All the textures come through really nicely. But the main source of light are these little lamps. I believe there's another one right over here behind John's head. So let's play through this for a second. All right, so we see the flames. There's even one down here on the ground. All right. So right away, we understand that they obviously, to get the lights set up correctly for a scene like this, the light sources for the characters are supposed to be these flames, but for a camera, that is not enough light. So there are, obviously, lights set up in different places above the camera, off camera, to put light on the characters, put light on the background. That moonlight you see in the background, that's not actual moonlight, that's actually artificial light. So that's pretty obvious. I don't want to insult your intelligence, but I'm just saying that to point it out. So let's look. Right now, this is really good lighting because we have a light here on John's face, but it looks like the light's coming from behind him, which makes sense because we have a light source here, and probably one behind his head. There's also a light source down here at the bottom, so it makes sense that you'd put a little bit of a light right here to make it seem as though the light source is behind him. Same with Sam. It looks as though they probably have a light shooting straight through this little, these two columns here, and is shining on the side of his face. The light's pointed towards where the light source is. Let's keep playing. And they're just talking, going through. All right, right here, we go back. He turns around. The camera switches from one side to the other side. Now we're in front, facing John straight on instead of Sam and that two-shot. This is still a really good lighting setup. It's a soft glow on the side of the face that's away from where the camera is. So basically, what that means for good lighting setup is when two characters are interacting, there's a thing called the 180-degree rule. I'm not going to explain it much, but I will say there's a line between one character's nose. Let's say this is the other character's nose. You were to imagine there's a line running from here through here, and it also runs through the head and through the body, depending on where the characters are facing. They're going to be looking at each other. So when you're filming, you either want to pick this side for the camera to stay on, or this side for the camera to stay on. You don't always have to do this, but the most cinematic lighting you're going to do for a basic camera shoot of this nature is to take the light source and make sure it is on the side opposite to where the camera is on. So if me and Billy here, Billy the mic, are talking and we choose to put the camera on this side, that means that the way you're looking right now should be the light that's pointing at me. But let's make this a little easier. Let's say the camera is the camera looking at me, and this microphone is the other character looking at me. That would mean my light source should be on this side of me if you want really good cinematic lighting. So the side of the face that's closest to the camera is going to have a nice dark shadow. That's exactly what we're seeing here with Jon Snow. He is going to look off to the right side of the camera. His nose is pointing towards the right side of the frame, and so that means it's classic kind of over the shoulder, close up, whatever you want to call it. They switch back and forth between these, but it's really good lighting right now. Now we're gonna keep playing through. I hope that made sense, and let's keep going. Hold on. All right. Go back to this. Still good. This is an over-the-shoulder shot. You see a little bit of Jon Snow's coat looking at Sam, and Sam's eye line and his nose is slightly pointed off to the left side. So as you can see, they have picked the side the camera's going to stay on. This is a good example of that rule, the 180-degree rule. But as we will see as we move farther, it is not a good illustration of how to light your subjects. Still looking good. Still looking good. Everything up to this point's looking good. All right, so right now we have an example of our light sources. We have a light source here. We have a light source here. We have a light source down here. Now let's pay attention. Everything out beyond the wall, so pretty much right over here past John, is maybe a mile-high drop-off. This is a gigantic wall in the show. Very epic. However, everything past this point is all moonlight. There's nothing on the wall down at this point, right? And we'll see another shot of this coming up. But there's no light source past the edge of this wall, which happens to be right past where John is standing. All right, everything up to this point looks fine, right? Sam stepped into some darkness, right? And if you watch the show, you know Sam's a little scared of heights, and that's kind of what they're talking about in this scene, things that he's scared of. And all the light sources, they're all behind Sam, so now he's kind of stepped into the darkness, which is really good. It makes sense as far as lighting goes. All right, and here's the famous shot of the wall at night. You see John is standing real close to the edge of the wall. It's like a mile drop off. Everything beyond that point is all dark. You can't see anything. A nice up shot. Now we also see that there is a little light source down by their feet. It is off. Okay, so if I'm Sam, it's off to my right. If I'm John, it's off to my left. So the lighting should emulate this. It should be consistent. Everything that's on Sam, if I'm Sam, everything that's on this side of me should be dark. And I should be having my light source on this side of me. And with John, it's the opposite because they're facing each other. Light sources are the same. All right. Here we go. Here we go. Looking over, he's scared to get close to the edge. Still looks good. Sam's a little bit in the darkness, but the light sources are still there, correct. And we're going to keep playing through at real time. Good lighting on John. Close up, and here is the offender. Okay. This bothered me so much. As you can see, out of everything I have explained up to this point, this should be obvious. The light that is on his face is on the opposite side that it should be. The lighting is on the same side as the camera, which is not a bad thing, but the light sources for every other shot in this scene has been on the opposite side of where the camera was. The opposite side. John, it's consistent. You look at John's shot. Let's play through. When we get to John's shot, oh man, look at this. This is terrible. You get the flame in the background. It's literally telling you, and they did a little bit of a backlight on him on that side to show the flame lighting up the backside of him. But we get to John once it gets back to his part here. And look at that. His light is correct. Everything that is on John's right side and everything that's on Sam's left side should be dark, should be shadowed. Nothing but moonlight, because literally the edge of the wall is right there. There's no light coming from that side of them. Yet, here we are. And we saw that. There's no light hanging down off the side of the wall. We saw that in the wide shot that they just showed when Sam didn't want to get close to it. There's no light there. So, we step close to the edge, no light, yet we get to his close-up, and wouldn't you know, a light on the side that's supposed to be the edge of the wall where no light's coming from. This doesn't make sense to me, because if we scroll through right? We're going to scroll through, and we're going to get back to this shot right here. Look at this. On John, it's consistent. The guy on the left, the long hair, it's consistent. The light source is coming from the flames, the torches in the background, and the torch at his feet. But Sam is not lit up the way he was on his close-up shot. It's not even close. He stepped into the darkness, and this is consistent with the lighting, the natural lighting. But they were like, we need some light on his face. I would not have been as mad at this if they just said, okay, he stepped into the darkness for the wider 2 shots and whatever, but on the close-up, we're going to give him a little bit of light on the side of the face that's consistent with John. But no, I don't know if this couldn't have been a creative decision, because there's nothing creative about this. They just put the light on the wrong side, and obviously this is a set. They can move the light around wherever they want to, and they chose the wrong side. Now, I'm not going to say this was season 1. I don't know what kind of crew, I don't know what kind of gaffer they're working with. I don't know what kind of people are on set. I do know the directors were not very experienced, but most of the time in budgeted films and shows, the director doesn't have to be as directly directing where the light's being put. The gaffer, the DP, these people should know this, right? All the director should have to say is, hey, where's the light source? Okay, let's make the lighting look like that. These directors didn't catch this. I'm not going to say I would not make this mistake. But I am 25 years old. Still going to be 25 for another 7 months. I can tell you with certainty, if I was going through a show, if I was going through making a film, this would catch my eye. Now, I know the directors, I believe their names were Dan and David. They were not as experienced directors. They hadn't done very much. I don't know how much they've done at all, but they didn't do very much. And this really bothered me. I don't know why, but I thought maybe I could talk about this on the podcast, and maybe I can point it out in a way that will cause other people who are interested in filmmaking, who are interested in lighting, who might be very new to the craft, that this is not how you light a scene. Other filmmakers, people who work in the professional world, they're going to see this, and although the story's great, although the storytelling's very good, very high production, as the seasons went on, they got better and better and better up to the last season, which was visually amazing. Just the character development, the story kind of fell apart because they rushed it. But this is season 1. I know that they're better than this because I've seen all the other scenes. So they might have just let it slip through and say, hey, we got to create 10 episodes, 45 minutes apiece. Cut us some slack, and maybe I will at the end of this once I talk through it. But I have to say, this is filmmaking 101, right? And I will tell you, I am very new to understanding these principles. I'm very new to training my eye to see this kind of stuff. So if you don't catch these kind of things, don't feel bad. It doesn't mean that you aren't creative. It doesn't mean you can't pay attention to detail. It doesn't mean that you aren't a good filmmaker or director or gaffer or something of that, whatever your passion might be in related to filmmaking or the arts. Because this is a newfound thing that I have observed in myself, to be able to see these kind of things. And I think that comes along with experience. It definitely comes along with experience. It comes along with trying your hardest to observe, trying your darndest to observe all of the shows, all of the movies you watch, and see, is this lazy, or is this industry standard? Is this laziness? Is this inexperience? Or is this experience? Is this wisdom? Is this knowledge? Is this creativity, right? When it comes to lighting for a movie, here's the difference. So you set up for a documentary. I would say, yes, if you're in a room, try to make it look like maybe the light source. If you have a window in frame or there's an obvious light source in your shot, well, do your best to try to make it look as beautiful as you can, but still follow the light source. With filmmaking, the light source is everything. That's why when I say filming outside, I haven't said this very many, I'll say it now many times, and I'll say it now. When filming outside, the best thing you can do is, if you're artistically wanting to, now remember, everything has to be artistic. Everything should be artistic. So, movies like Mad Max, the most recent one, they filmed it out in the desert, in the sunlight, everything's in the sunlight. Well, a lot of the shots, especially the wide ones, are going to show harsh shadows. When you get on the close-ups and you want to see details, you don't want those harsh shadows. They're going to shade the character enough to show the details. So basically, here's another principle for filming outside and dealing with lighting. If you have direct sunlight, that's the oddest lighting situation to be in. If you're at golden hour, which is either like around 4 p.m., 5 p.m., depending on the time of the year, basically the sun's almost setting, but it's not quite gone, right? That's when a lot of photographers go out and they take pictures because it's going to be very beautiful sun. It's going to be light rays coming through trees. You can backlight with the sun. You can do all of these fancy things to make your photos look so much better without that much effort, right? When you're making a film, a lot of times you don't have the luxury of having a 5-hour golden hour. A lot of times if you see a movie that has a lot of golden hour shots, a lot of times they're just cutaways. A lot of times they're just thrown in the film to give a few beauty shots, and they're cutaways. They're not like big scenes happening in golden hour. Now, we talked about this recently on the podcast, The Mandalorian, right? In season 1, they had kind of a golden hour shot where the sun is setting, but they are working in a studio with an LED room, essentially. They can put whatever they want on the wall, and it interacts with the camera's perspective depending on what the physical camera in studio is pointing at and how close it is with the character and everything. It's crazy technology. But I will say that no matter what happens in your scene, most of the time, you must emphasize on the characters the lighting that matches the source. And when I learned this principle has always been around, but I've never fully grasped this. So I went back and I watched some scenes from Path to Crimson. I will say it's a little bit of a cringe fest. It's okay. It's a part of the process of filmmaking. If everything you've made up to this point causes you to cringe, curl up, go to sleep, and just be like, oh, I'm never going to create anything again. I'm really bad at making films. Or I'm never going to make it to be a good director. I'm just not a creative person because I look at what I've done and it's not any good. Hey, first off, let's pat ourselves on the back for maybe writing, directing, editing, and completing a film. And if you were able to market it and get a lot of people to watch it, bonus points, kudos. That's a task in itself. To be able to visually see in your mind a story, write out the details, film those details with characters, with audio, with a camera, in the right perspectives, do your darndest, once again, to follow some basic film rules of the nature in where the camera's placed, following the 180-degree rule in dialogue scenes, making sure you don't cross the axis. Maybe you already knew about this rule and you tried your hardest to make sure the light sources match on the character lighting where they're actually coming from, the directions. Maybe that's the case. But I was watching like Path to Crimson, and I broke this rule. I did the exact same thing as this many times. Now, I will say One thing is, when you're rushed on a film set, a lot of times you're just going to be like, oh, I don't have time to worry about this. Let's just get it filmed, throw up a light so we can see the character, and let's just film it and get it done. It's not going to be the best thing I'm ever going to film. It's not going to be the best thing I have filmed. But goodness, I just want to get this done. That's valid. That might be what they thought about here. But still, it's not an excuse, right? And I know they didn't know at this point that Game of Thrones was going to be a wild success. I know they didn't know that people were going to be analyzing every little detail about it like I am tonight. Going all the way back to season 1 to analyze one scene of an exchange that only lasts, what? A minute? No, 2 minutes, roughly. 2 minutes, 10 seconds. And I'm analyzing it like crazy on a podcast. During the season of 2020, the pandemic. Listen, as creators, we're called to learn. Believe it or not, creators have to learn how to be creative. And it takes time. It takes processing. It takes questioning the crap out of everything you're told, right? It takes questioning a lot of stuff to get to the point where you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes sense why I would follow that rule. Or it makes sense why I broke this rule in this circumstance. All of that to say is I've seen myself progress for the better in the world of filmmaking, in the world of analyzing lighting, creative visual shots. And it's taken a while for me to get to this point where I can see these things. But I just want you to know, you're not bad if you can't see them yet. You're not. It's not a bad thing. You're not a bad filmmaker. You're not a bad director. Not a bad cinematographer. It just means you have to keep going, keep pushing forward, keep learning. And that's a good thing. It's exciting. Think about this. Think about this. In 2 to 3 years, you could be on a YouTube channel. You could be on someone else's podcast. You could be watching a movie with your wife, your husband, your significant other, right? At home, and then being like, what the heck? And everyone's like, what? And you're like, the lighting was all screwy in that scene. And this is like at a big show. Why did they do that? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? And then you're able to sort of sit back and be like, yeah, I have become better. I am becoming a better filmmaker. I am noticing the things that are important for me to notice, you know? And that's a good thing. It means you're learning. Believe it or not, even the most creative people are not that creative. They can't really see things. I am very much a visual person, but I can still struggle with seeing certain things, right? I struggle with noticing aspects and catching them. Things like this. These are professionals, a whole crew of people, and no one thought, hey, let's get Sam and John's lighting consistent for back and forth dialogue to make it look like the scene makes sense where the lighting source is coming from. But also, I will say the acting was on point. The characters being vulnerable was very good. The CGI, the special effects to add the wall, the set was built beautifully. There are so many things that got right. They look dirty and wet and like they don't look sweaty like they're hot, but they look sweaty like they're wet. They've been rained on by snow. They look grimy, you know? They look tired. But they messed up with one thing. And boy, oh boy, I called them out. And they don't care. The reason why I did this, 2 reasons. I want people to know that the best make mistakes. And I also want you to know that because even the best make mistakes, you're allowed to make mistakes also. You're allowed to learn and also to acknowledge that it takes time to learn. And you don't have to be the best. You can still create an amazing product while messing up over and over and over again.